to start recording.
Thank you. Welcome this evening, everyone, to the Facilities Advisory Regular Committee meeting for May 4th, 2022. Calling the meeting to order at 7:35. We'll start with the roll call. Brian Gebhardt, the chair. I am present. Cecily Lee shared with me that she was not going to be able to make it this evening. She's not present. Kenyana Penzone, student representative, did not see present. Henry Fung.
Here.
Tom Ekman.
Here.
Mary Vigil. She's not present. Michelle Hartman Gruber, not present. Sharon Coco. I see Sharon's present.
I'm here, sorry.
And no worries. Use it as a test to make sure everybody's audio is working at the same time. William Rochek.
Present.
Robert Ho is not present. Jennifer Parker.
Here.
Jennifer Aochi, she emailed me noting me that she was not going to be present. And let's see here. So we have 6 present. Anybody I missed?
You didn't say my name, but I think you know I'm here. This is
Bobby. So I'm working from an old version of my member list. So thank you, Bobby. Apologies for that.
No worries.
Hey, Brian, also Michael Estacio, I believe, is filling in for Michelle Hartman Gruber.
Oh, well, welcome, Michael.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
Well, then we definitely do have quorum.
And Brian, I know I don't count toward quorum, but I am here.
I should acknowledge Trustee Jones.
Sure. I want to make sure if you need that for records that I am here.
Also, Mary Vigil just joined too. Sorry I'm late.
Thank you for joining. I need to update my little process for tracking who here is not. Although I think Laura does a great job of doing it as well. Give me just a moment here to make a quick note. All right. Okay, well, we definitely have quorum with 9 present. So I will move to our first item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
I'll move to adopt it, Brian. This is Sharon.
Thank you.
And I will second it, Mary Vigil.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye or raise your virtual hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All opposed? Well, lower your virtual hand. And all opposed? All right, motion carries. So we'll move on to introductions. So I want to introduce our newest member, Bobby Perry, a community member joining us from the Kennedy attendance area. Welcome. And as noted a moment ago, Michael Estacio is filling in for Michelle Hartman Gruber from SEIU, representing SEIU. Welcome, Michael. And Laura Forrest is becoming an official co-liaison to the FAC, which will allow her to further support us. She's been giving us great support getting agendas and getting information out. And this will make her kind of an official liaison in addition to Kelly, and kind of help balance the load there. And I think we also have Superintendent Hammock has joined us as well this evening.
Good evening, everybody. Just stopping in as a visitor. I have another call that starts at 8 o'clock for work, so I'll only be here for a little bit, but wanted to stop in and visit and say hello and just be a part of the meeting. So thank you for all the work that you're doing to help Fremont Unified School District.
Thank you, CJ. And then I see we have a few other a few other people on the on the call this evening, and I just wanted to confirm. Well, I guess I can cover. If there's anybody else from staff who would like to introduce themselves. And Michelle Hartman-Gruber has joined us as well. Welcome.
Hi.
All right. Well, with no further introduction, we'll move on to item 3, approval of the minutes from April 4th, which are attached to the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion. This is Jennifer Parker to approve the minutes.
Second? Is there a second?
This is
I'll
Sharon.
second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Jennifer Parker motions, Sharon Coco seconds. All in favor, please say aye or raise your virtual hand. Lower your virtual hand. All opposed, it's, raise your virtual hand or say nay now. Motion carries, and we've approved the minutes. Takes us to oral and written communications. I see, I think we have Laura, and also Kelly Lynch McMahon has joined us, fresh from the CBOC meeting just before now. Are there any written communications that the CBOC has received that you guys are aware of?
I am not aware of any. Laura, you can speak to if you've received any.
No, none.
Are there any members of the public or committee members that have a communication not on the agenda? All right. I did have one. Let's see where I want to cover that. I did have a couple notes. That I did want to share with the committee under this category. One, I wanted to thank Superintendent Kamek, who took time today to speak with me and Benita Verma, the chair of CBOC, about kind of planning future facilities needs and actions and advisory work we'll be doing. So thank you for that. A second item I wanted to share, as a community member, I've been following the city of Fremont is working on an updated housing element, and which is kind of the every 7 years they have a housing element that it kind of identifies the housing need and kind of targets for where to develop within the city. And so it's I think it's a good background both for our committee work and just as a citizen of Fremont, and encourage people to look at the city of Fremont. They are taking community input. They do office hours, so any community member can do a Zoom call with them and learn more and provide their input, which I actually did last week. And I see some opportunities that for the district and city in this area as well. That I will we'll share with Superintendent Kamek and Kelly offline, but wanted to make that note so people were aware. I believe the housing element will go to the city council in June, so now is a good time to review and give input. It takes us to item 5, review CBOC Measure E finance reports. So in thinking about the agenda for tonight with Kelly and Laura, there was nothing urgent, nothing urgent to advise the board on, but we thought this was a good opportunity for us to get more familiar with the reports that staff and the CBOC uses to manage the Measure E program. And also, well, the second item is familiar with Prop 51, which is related to state matching funds. And so kind of FAC education, so we're all that much more familiar with things as more facilities questions come before us and the board. Towards that, in the agenda, both links to last month's reports. The CBOC just met and got their May report, but links to last month's April report, which are very similar to tonight's report, were shared as reference. I guess by show of virtual hands, I wanted to get a sense for how many people managed to take a peek at these reports, to get a sense, how deep to go into the review. If everybody's already looked at them, then we can move a bit faster through it. But I also want to make sure if anybody needs time for context, let me know as well. It's about half. Let's see here. I have the new report available for reference, but I will stick with the ones I shared with you just for actually, maybe I'll bring up the new one, so you haven't seen the most current items. So there are two reports. One is a financial summary, and the other is a project summary. We'll start with the financial summary.
Brian, are you sharing your screen, or did you want me to share my screen?
I was just in the middle of getting myself going on sharing my screen, but thank you for asking. Just pulling everything up. Multitasking, as they say. All right, let's see how this goes. All right, hopefully everybody's seeing the cover page now. And I guess, is there anything you wanted to add to the introduction, Kelly? I guess my thought was, after asking you if there's anything you want to add, was just to briefly skim through and then do Q&A. So we move pretty quickly. Just
sure.
let me know if anybody needs to slow down.
Available if there are questions, but you can go ahead and follow your train of thought.
Okay, great. And I do welcome questions along the way as well. I'm gonna make this a little bigger here. So I guess a little history. This report, or a similar format to it, has been used, I think, throughout the life of the bond. And it started as a collaboration between staff and the CBOC. And anecdotally, I've heard it's one of the kind of more transparent and detailed reports around. I've anecdotally heard from staff. And so there's two pieces. Okay, so there's always good and bad to how complete your report is, right? And trying to communicate both the summary and the detail in the same report is always a balancing act. And so it may take some practice getting used to reading this report. But I'll briefly go over it. This first page is the summary page. And it summarizes the revenue and expenditures, and including the Measure E bond series A and B. And I can't remember how many series of bonds we are.
We are currently selling our 4th series, and we have been
4th
funded
series.
for the first 3.
Thank you. And then probably more pertinent to us is the expenditures, and it covers the 3 major categories. Actually, Kelly, would you explain those categories?
Sure. So if we're following the page from the top, you have your revenue summary, which identifies all of the revenues that have been generated to date. So you have your overall budget of the 664,262. You have the total revenues received based on the amount of bonds that we have sold and that we have received funds for. And then receivables is actually the interest earned on the money that we have in the bank right now. And this is calculated on a monthly basis, so that number changes probably every quarter. I don't think that they necessarily change it in our system, but I know that the county updates it for us on a quarterly basis. The next section is the expenditure summary. So you have the 4 categories, well, 3 categories, major categories that the projects are divided into. You have your site expenses, planning, and design expenses, and your actual construction costs. Here is your overall budget summary and breakout of how the 664, which matches the same number at the top, is broken out according to those 3 major areas. This also lets you know encumbered means this is the amount of money that we've actually entered into agreements with people for to provide services or either products for the bond. Expenditures these are actual expenses that we have billed against the encumbered amount that we have, or budgeted amount. And then you have budget remaining, which means that's the amount of money left to still spend. And then the encumbered balance, which also indicates how much money is still available for those encumbered funds. You have a graphical representation to show the same dollar values as it relates to this chart up above. And then below, you have additional revenue streams or additional funds that the bond actually has dollars associated, which is the E-rate program, the OPSC state funding, and your Prop 39 dollars. So here are the total budgets for all of those. And once again, you have encumbered expenditure, remaining budget, and encumbered balance. So I know Brian had spoken about the LPSC state funding. There was a question as to how it was identified. Here you can see this is the amount of money we've received from the state of California since the inception of the bond for the OPSC projects that were completed using our OPSC matching state fund program. And I hope that answers and gives you a very quick high-level summary of this page. Brian,
Thank you.
Can go on to the next
And then
one.
can you, and then these are excluded from totals. Maybe you can elaborate for a moment on that.
Not sure, I didn't quite hear your full statement.
Oh, I mean, elaborate on why they're excluded from totals, right? I think these are
They're
included in this report for
I see, but
context.
you're talking about the excluded from totals because those dollars are not they do not make up what bond dollars are in terms of what we have what's the word I'm looking for? When we issue bonds, the bond issuance was for the 664, which is exclusive of those 3 pots of money. So it's not calculated as part of our bond dollars that we have through the bond series that we're raising dollars from the taxpayers. That's why it's excluded from that balance.
And at least in the case of the OPSC state funding, it's in part called out here for reference because some of the bond projects have been used to get the state matching funds.
Correct. So it has been past practice. It's my understanding it has been past practice that there are several projects that were funded from the bond program that were part of the OPSC state matching fund program. And that was done to, one, either facilitate the execution of the work quickly with the intention of the matching dollars coming back and replenishing the bond. But I'm not clear as to the actual, I guess, execution of that. But that is my understanding. That was the past practice, that those dollars were utilized to replenish projects that were funded from the bond for those state matching grant programs.
And recently, the board clarified that they wanted the funds called out separately, and for transparency's sake, though, still including them in reference on the report. And so, kind of back to my original comment about how balancing the amount of detail and summary, but this report includes not just, tries to cover all the bond, anything that's been kind of even tangentially related to the bond. I will move on. And actually, Bobby, you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So the OPSC state funding, that's Prop 51, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I use those two interchangeably.
Yeah, I just
which may or may not be 100% accurate, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, and that's, because I had heard that in the CBOC meeting that you had us watch, and I just wanted to clarify that, or just ask, or that the OPSC is the same thing as Prop 51.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. That's correct. So then we get into the detailed per project budgets, or this, like, really the summary. And the what's included here are all the projects that are in progress, and so you can kind of see month over month. The CBOC gets this report monthly, and they're all posted online. Laura and the team did a nice job keeping that site updated with these reports from the CBOC meetings. And so you can look at the reports and see how project progress has been made, or more often people probably use this report to look at a particular project that they're interested in. And then these are the closed projects that have been completed. And we've gone a long ways into this bond. There's lots of good projects that have been completed. And then last but not least, we have the future projects. And these are projects that that have budget allocated to them, but have not been approved to move into design, or to move forward in design and bid and construction. And this last page, actually, Kelly, I may ask you to touch this last page, because it's actually a new one for me, the program administrative costs.
This was a request to have all of the expenses associated with the bond identified. So as you know, all of the bond costs are, we are not allowed to use general fund dollars for administration of the bond. So this is to show you all the cost of the administration of the bond and where those dollars are identified.
And it was just shared in the CBOC meeting. And perhaps again, Kelly, you could clarify that the remaining budget is negative, but that there was some that's not actually
so
there's some complexity about how that's represented.
Let me see here. So if you look at the expenditures, it says the expenditures is a negative 9,457,207. So the new reporting software that we're using, we're still in the process of getting it to synchronize itself with Escape. And so in doing so, this particular feature, they are in the process of tweaking. So in essence of time in getting this report out, they were not able to make the correction. So they still printed the report with the information that was available. And so that is why you see this negative number. But we are not in the negative on the bond. It's just that in this particular expenditure report, it's reflected as a negative because we're in the process of reconciling all of the expenses. And then it'll be corrected and show an actual positive number and not a negative number.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions about this report, or comments for that matter?
And just to also let you guys know, this is available on the CBOC website. And of course, if there's any specific questions you have related to any specific project, you of course can contact myself or Laura and we will get you information. One of the things that we are also working on, a feature on the report, is that you can kind of hover over a particular project and then actually pull up the budget breakdown for that project so that you could see the detail of the site costs, the design costs, the construction costs, and all the various, sub activities that make up that entire number. That was something that was requested that we're working on to be able to make available to everybody to be able to see in detail.
And there's actually one more note I wanted to make. There is a kind of there's a bond implementation plan, and the kind of the full list of projects. And at the end, you saw the future projects in group 2 and 3 that have budget allocated for them. There is a group 4 set of projects that has no budget allocated for them, and so I think that's important to be aware of. To know of that there are projects from the bond that were kind of originally identified and were hoped to fit into this bond that are kind of at risk in this group 4 now. And I think that we have seen huge increases in costs over the last few years. We've seen increased requirements from the Department of State Architect. There's lots of reasons for this. It's unfortunate for sure, but that's one of the challenges the board and staff, COC, FAC has all faced, is how do we best use the funds we have for our schools? And so some projects may not, may be postponed. Now, when we are still definitely meeting the language and overall intent of the bond. We've, as you saw in the report, lots of projects, lots of value have been delivered, and we have 3 middle schools in progress too that are going to be a huge for supporting our students and schools. But it is important to know, and we know there's a lot more identified need. The update to the long-range facilities plan will be critical in kind of reassessing where we are now and what we need to push for, and how do we fund it. Very likely, considering a future bond. But I think it's good for us to be aware of that context. The second report. Let me see if I can get the right window here. Is a nice project detail report provided to CBOC every month. Not obviously. I know Kelly and I welcome any questions about any projects on this report, but not planning to go over this report in detail. Wanted you guys to be aware of it. Be aware you could attend the CBOC as a community member to learn more, or watch the recordings. And always, if there's something a faculty member wants agendized, like a review of this report or whatever, that's something you can always request as well. But yeah, this lists all the projects in progress, those that are in design, and going through the design process, you know, getting through the Department of State Architect and whatnot, which are these groups of projects here. Just one parenthetical note, I know the Group 1 elementary projects are coming to the board for review soon, so that'll be another major step for our next set of projects. Updates on all the projects that are under construction, and then any projects that are in the process of or were just closed out, and then gone through the official closeout process to close out the construction process, and then after that you'll see it on that other report in the completed project section. Oh, I missed this part of the CBOC meeting where they were sharing some of the photos, so I'll leave it on that. Any questions about this report? All right. Well, then we will move on to the next agenda item, which is the CBOC Prop 51 presentation. I thought this is important for us to be aware of because Prop 51 matching funds are a major source for the district to get additional facility funds. All right. And I'll share the report here.
So Brian, this is the report that I sent you that Kevin had provided to us last meeting.
This is, yeah, actually, I think.
Okay. I just
Laura
wanted to make sure we're talking about the same thing. Yes.
Yes,
okay.
I think Laura found the link okay. From the CBOC meeting. Yes, correct.
Okay. Got it. So just to give you guys context, the CBOC had requested a presentation on Prop 51 to understand what the process was and how those funds were obtained for the district and how, excuse me, the process that we go through to get those dollars. And so this is a presentation that was provided for us by school facilities consultants, and they reviewed types of eligible projects, specific timelines, fundings that we've received to date from the inception of the program in 1998, and then any funding pending approvals that we have of applications that we currently have in place. And they talked about how when we get to certain milestones within the process, how we actually then get state approval for our funds to be, for our projects to be funded, and then the time frame that it takes from when that occurs to when we actually will receive the funds. And in many instances, you know, years go by. We've had projects that have been recently funded that were submitted in 2014 that were finally reviewed by the state, and you know, within the last, say, 2 years, we've actually gotten approval from the state budget office to, hey, we've now reviewed this project. We have dollars available from our state bond program or from our surplus program that we are now releasing dollars to fund these projects. And then we as a district have a certain period of time that we have to respond to say, yes, we still have this project on our docket, or no, we no longer have a need, or that project, the scope has actually expanded and the funds that we initially requested are insufficient to cover the need that we initially had requested. So he went over all of that. And then when they talk about the acknowledged list projects, that means the state has acknowledged and has approved that those projects are valid and will be funded in the next round or two of fundings that they have statewide for various projects. So it's not like we're not just the only person. It's like we're part of, you know, all the other school districts statewide that apply through this program, and then they go through and rank them in order based on whatever criteria they've established to say, we're going to fund these this time or next time, or, you know, however they go through it. So, but you're welcome to go through and read this. If you want to go to the next slide, I think,
Yeah,
so here is a very important piece. So modernization, the state funding program is really specifically just, excuse me, for designing for funding projects that have significant modernization. And significant modernization are projects that exceed 51% of the retrofit or you know, modernization value of an overall project. It's usually based on the age of the facility, number of classrooms, and your overall site enrollment. Currently, we have 30 sites that have available eligibility, and we have an estimated $50 million available in state funding for those 30 sites. And so we're in the process right now of those projects being reviewed and basically either approved or denied based on how we fall within the pecking order of how these projects are going to be funded through the state. We have applications that go into the Division of the State Architect, and in conjunction with the Office of Public School Construction, and they work in conjunction with one another to determine whether these projects are valid and meet DSA requirements for viability, for, you know, structural soundness, and meet the requirements for, you know, fulfilling the needs of the sites as it relates to the type of school that it is. Well, it's elementary, middle school, high school, special daycare, you know, those kinds of things. And then they also have projects that are funded under our Measure E for technology, modernization, replacement projects, which will include roofing, windows, HVAC, electrical, you know, power, things like that. And then any infrastructure upgrades, which usually includes our utilities and water supply, and anything that we consider to be infrastructure, which is things that support the function and operation of our facilities for school usage. So if you go to the next one, Brian, and I won't dive much further into this, but I just want to make sure everybody understands. Then we also have the new construction eligibility, and that is usually determined based on enrollment and also eligibility at the time we apply. So even though we may have applied for projects back in, you know, 2014, 15, 16, when our enrollment was high, those projects may actually still get funded. But if it's, I believe, beyond 5 or 6 years, we have to do a recalculation, and the state will say, hey, you know, is this project still viable? You need to let us know what your enrollment numbers are, and we'll adjust your project based on where you are at that time. We have not had that occur right now. So we're crossing our fingers that the projects that we submitted prior to 2019 will get funded based on our enrollment numbers of that time. And we'll see if they require us to re-review them. But I know that there's about 7 projects right now that I'm working on with our consultant to get our applications submitted and re-evaluated to the state this week. So I'll be able to report back to you guys where we are next month based on whatever we do over the next week or so. The new construction eligibility also includes new classrooms on existing sites, new school structures, and site acquisition for new schools or expansions. So one of the strategies that we're talking about doing right now is we are going to be submitting applications for our middle schools, because those are new construction. And at the time that they were started, we demonstrated a need based on enrollment. And so we're going to basically submit the modernization piece and say, hey, state of California, we've modernized X amount of square footage of our site, but we've also included new construction that will allow us to have a certain level of eligibility too. So we're looking at both types of applications for our middle schools, and we'll be able to have a clear picture of what funds we would actually be able to recapture based on the eligibility requirements that are part of these programs. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. So we'll see how that goes. And next one, and then I know we've got a bunch of stuff, Brian. Yeah, and then your program timelines. These, as I said, they take anywhere from 1 year up to 15 years, but it all is depending upon state funding, eligibility requirements, and availability of funding for the types of projects that we classify for. But this is a very good presentation, and if there's any additional questions that you guys have, please feel free to ask me, and you know, I'll try and answer them as best as possible.
Bobby.
Yeah, I had watched the CVOC last meeting, the April one, and I didn't get a chance to log on today, but I'll watch that later. But my main question after watching this was kind of when we get the reimbursement, because it seems like we have a reimbursement model as opposed to, you know, waiting until we get the funding to do the facility modernization or new construction. But when we get the reimbursement, how can that reimbursement be spent? Does it have to go back to the bond, or can it be just spent on facility needs in the school? And that was my main question that I had regarding Prop 51.
So it's my understanding, and there are several different schools of thought, and I'm by no means I'm trying to speak for anyone other than myself, but it is my understanding that the Prop 51 dollars are a reimbursement. So when we apply, the state says, okay, school district, you're required to cover 50% of the expenditure for this project, and we will give you matching dollars based on what you spend. We as a district, or whatever district that is applying for the funds, can make a decision to say, okay, I'm not going to wait for these dollars to be reimbursed from the state. I'm going to go ahead with some level of confidence and assurance that I'll eventually be reimbursed, but I'm going to go ahead and finish this work and do this modernization because we actually need to do it, and then I'll wait for the state of California to reimburse me. So when that occurs, those dollars for reimbursement, in essence, are not necessarily obligated or tied to a specific project because we've already fulfilled our obligation of our 50-50 match to the state. The state then says we're required to spend those dollars on facilities either in the same manner, scope, or spirit of how it was initially received. The board makes the final decision as to how those funds are then expended. And as I said, there are several different schools of thought. Our past practice in this district, from what I understand, has been to replenish the Measure E dollars with Prop 51 dollars. I don't know that there's necessarily a particular board action that stated that, but I do know that that was a past practice that had occurred and has now been brought to the forefront to actually now be brought to the board for the board to decide what exactly they want to do with those dollars. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Because one of the other things that was confusing to me is that the site that generated the eligibility and then essentially received the reimbursement, does that reimbursement then have to be spent on that site, or again, can it just go back into a larger pot of money that really there are some other things that the state requires, that it be on facilities, that it be whatever it is that the state says Prop 51 can be, because that's why
to answer your question, it is reimbursed according to the project that applied for it. But once it's given back to the school district, it is not tied to that particular site, but it is tied to the specific use and intent of those dollars. So it does have to be a facilities related expenditure, and it has to be within the same sort of scope of what initially the intention was. So it's not like we can say, oh, we're going to go ahead and build a new swimming pool and then get the money back from the swimming pool and not do the swimming pool. Or, you know, if the swimming pool's already been renovated, so maybe there's another swimming pool that we can apply those dollars to that still fit the scope of work that was initially intended for that particular, for those dollars that we applied for. So it's like we can't go and say, oh yeah, we want to build a baseball field, but this particular pot of money we were supposed to do new HVAC with, you know, if that makes sense.
Kelly, I don't know if there was any plans to get a more specific kind of legal definition of how the funds have to be spent, just to make sure, because if I interpret what you said just right, that implies to be more restrictions on the funds we receive than I thought, right? If it has to be in a particular category versus it just has to be a capital project.
Well,
Yeah.
capital project is very broad. So that's why I say it's not like this like little tiny thing. It's very broad, but it's not like you could, like I said, you can't say, oh yeah, I want to, you know, I spent this on a pool, but then you're going to buy, you know, theater lights with it or something. You know what I mean?
Wait,
yeah,
Well, I guess it'd be better to have more specific examples so it's clearer, because if I understand what you're saying, the 15 million in the previous report, right? You know, some of it has to be in this category of spending. Some of it has to be something else, and that it seems like that could be very kind of restrictive, given our needs are much more broad than that.
And that's where
that's not, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Bobby. Yeah.
That's where I'm getting confused, Brian, because it doesn't have to go back to the bond, is what I'm hearing, right? It can go into a bigger pot of money, but then it's a very restricted pot of money that if we were reimbursed based on, for your example, a swimming pool, then it can only be spent on a swimming pool, but maybe at a different site. That's where I'm getting confused, because I know we have these immense needs at the district, and I'm just trying to understand, because we clearly, you know, don't have the funding, so we're going to have to find it somewhere. But how do we prioritize? And if we're limited, then that kind of answers part of our question, right? If we are limited to only spend it on certain things, like I could see the larger like if it's a modernization or new capital outlay, I could see that kind of restriction, I guess, as a reimbursement. But that's why it would be very helpful to understand what are our limitations on those reimbursements, because I think
I will have Kevin put together a little cheat sheet for us.
Okay.
Because as I said, each project has its own personality, its own nuances, and its own level of restrictiveness. And one of the strategies, I was talking to the superintendent about this the other day, you know, we're looking strategically based on the limitations that we know we have. One of the reasons the money was moved into the bond fund is because the bond fund doesn't have as many restrictions as the restricted dollars have. So when you are putting it into the Fund 21, it kind of opens the door for us to be able to utilize it in a much broader fashion, still within the framework of facilities and capital projects. And so one of the things that we are toying with and having discussions and researching is how can we modify the scopes of work for some of the projects to be inclusive of some of these high priority projects that have been brought forward, that we could then safely and non-competitively actually get that work accomplished without infringing upon, you know, categorical dollars that have to be spent a certain way. And so we're looking into that, and we're trying to see how we can best utilize, you know, what we have in front of us to accomplish what, you know, we're trying to do, which is get all of these projects done and do it in a way that, you know, is beneficial and meets the criteria and boundaries that we're in for these dollars. So I hope that helped.
Well, I actually think it will be critical to get follow up from Kevin, because for as long as I've been involved talking about the state matching funds, and I think this probably was an oversimplification, but they've been talked about being very flexible for capital projects, and so the fact that they're actually maybe much more constrained than that is actually, you know, I can't remember that having been discussed anywhere in the last 5, 6, 7 years, in any of the forums I've been at. So that I think this is very important to clarify.
Okay. I will have that information for you.
And thank you for the question, Bobby. The rest of the report includes summaries of the funds we received, and so like this funding received predates our Measure E, or at least most of it, I believe. And actually we had other funds we used for construction, for example, building the ROP Technical Training Center, which, when was that? I guess it was that early 2000s, I think. And we actually, part of the reason we were able to do that project was we were able to get state matching funds. And so it's been a huge benefit, leveraging these dollars at the state level. And so just in this period, 71 million. And then this is a summary of more recent funding received under Prop 51. And so another 67 million. So it's definitely been hugely beneficial. I think one thing worth noting, and Kelly, please correct me if I get this wrong, but we are receiving a large match for the new elementary school, Lila Bringhurst Elementary School. But part of the way we negotiated with the developer, some of that goes to the developer, I believe, right?
Actually, the majority of it went back to the developer.
Yeah. Now, the developer worked with us and actually went above and beyond what they were legally required to contribute, and help get that school built. So it's so it was part of that negotiation. It would not have been as great of a school without those approaches, and without being able to leverage these state matching funds. And these are projects that have been submitted and are on the workload list. And remind me, Kelly, what's the workload list? I think, does that mean they got a shot at being funded? Is that what that means?
Sorry, but I didn't realize I was muted. The workload list, those are projects that are actually submitted to the state right now, and they're under review. And we're waiting to basically get acknowledgement that those are going to be funded within the next year. So I believe Walters, we received those dollars, I think, at the beginning of the year. And the IT projects we're doing a 30, 60-day and a 15-day review on several projects right now. So we should hear back from the state within the month for release of funding on those before September of this year. So.
And do you know if either of these projects are in that 15 million from the other report?
So these projects make up those dollars that they're referencing that will be available under, dollars available once the funds are received.
Oh, what I mean is, so we have the 15 million in the other report. It represents money we've received.
Right.
And
So
at least in the case,
that,
I'm sorry, what?
So 7.7 of the 15 is part of that.
Gotcha. But the 11 million here would be in addition to the 15.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
And we've actually
So-
received a portion of that 11 million, but I don't want to misspeak and say we have the full 11, but I know that of the IT projects, I know 2 of them have been reimbursed, but they were very small dollar amounts. So I have to look at my spreadsheet and see where we are with that. But I know that 11 million we're expecting before September of this year to be reimbursed.
So up to another 11 million on top of the 15 million. There may be some
Correct.
duplicate, maybe.
Correct.
So, which is good news. So some more resources are coming in. And the acknowledged list. Acknowledged lists are the things that have been submitted but are outside the bonding authority for Prop 51, which means the state doesn't have money to fund these projects, and that's
Correct.
why that's why the next. I mean, but
Well, I
we get
just
in
had
line.
a meeting today, which is very interesting. So, the state has a surplus right now of $100 million, and there's talk that they are going to put a portion of that, like money, into the bond program. So if they do that, there's an opportunity for some of these acknowledged list projects to actually get funded. So once the governor's report comes out this month and we have OPSC's summer list, we'll know whether or not any of these projects can be funded by any of that money if the governor chooses to put that surplus into the state bond program. So we're crossing our fingers that they do that. So
The other major mechanism to fund this is to pass another state bond and kind of replenish
Correct.
the state bond. So that'd be the other
Correct.
mechanism. Although your news, it would be much sooner and much more exciting as well.
Yeah, we're all
think
very excited about that.
And then I guess it's great to know that Kelly and staff have kind of gotten us in line, right? These projects get us in line because there's a long list from
Correct.
all school districts across the state. So we're in line for potentially, another 25 million.
We are in line with all 1,300 other school districts.
It's a competitive line, and sometimes the rules change. So we have to be, have to keep an eye on it for sure. And I think these notes kind of were earlier notes about how the state may use some of the general fund surplus to fund some of these projects.
So just to give you guys an update as well on the TKK program. So our district submitted for 9 sites, 9 new classrooms under that program. And so we'll await to hear whether our grant application gets approved and accepted based on our eligibility. But based on the criteria that was established for round 1, we were eligible for 9 actual classrooms district-wide for TK and K all-day program. So cross our fingers that we get consideration for that and can move forward come fall of 23. So.
And do you know roughly how much money that would be for 9 classrooms?
Actually, no. Yes, I do, but no, I don't, because we're still working out our final budgets on that. And I was working with staff on looking at, the enrollments and staffing loads. And then we're also working on modernization if there's certain classrooms that have to be modernized to accommodate a kindergarten. But most of our sites actually already have space available that our modernization expenditures would be minimized. And so that's why I'm hesitant to give you any numbers, because we're kind of like still figuring it all out. But
we're eligible. I was just curious. I just assumed we're eligible for 9 classrooms and there was some dollar value in that application too, but it sounds like it's more complicated than that. Much more.
It's a very complicated formula, and I don't want to waste our time explaining it to you guys.
That's fine. That's fine. But that's a separate program. This is a completely separate program from the
Correct.
OPSD program. And
Correct.
so county staff are turning over every rock they can.
We're trying.
Any other questions or comments? All right. I know this was a lot of information. I hope it was, helpful context, and we can, for when future decisions and advisory decisions come our way. We'll move on to item 7, which is staff update.
I do not have that much to update. I think the largest discussion that we spent a lot of time on at CBOC was the staff changes, and Superintendent Kamek was available to answer those particular questions. But as with regard to facilities, we are in the process of hiring 4 new positions, and those positions will be they're being advertised right now, but we're going to be starting the process for interviews within the next 3 weeks for a potential June hiring if we have qualified individuals that are screened and interviewed that will be able to assist us. That will be a huge help because, of course, internally facilities is short-staffed. Vanner's contract will be sunsetting in December, so we are kind of hurrying up to try and have overlap to allow staff to be trained and get all of that critical knowledge from the Vanner's team to try and finish the remainder of the bond programs out. We do have some concerns about the timing and timeliness of our ability to do that, but we will, as usual, put our boots on and buckle up and just kind of push through and work with what we've got and finish the best that we can with the resources that we have. There was a question raised on current staffing loads within our department, and currently I am still without an administrative assistant. The current one that was hired for our position, she's out on workers' comp through mid-month. She's been out since mid-April. And we have subs that come in and support the facilities department. And I do have 1 full-time senior project manager that was poached from the M&O department. And so they are also struggling to backfill their positions of people that they have lost. Let me think. We are interviewing for a new chief technology officer because, as you know, Mr. Lucas Bogle left and moved on to San Jose State University as their chief technical officer there. And we also are looking at additional budget technicians, and our accounting technicians positions are in the process of being filled because we have retirements and staff that transition to other departments. So with that, that's that report. In terms of facilities, all of your modernization projects are moving along really, really well. And we will be presenting to the board. I'm not sure if it's this meeting or if it's the first meeting in June to review the cost impacts and the labor shortages that we're experiencing due to the supply chain issues. We're in the process of putting together a comprehensive report to show where we are feeling those impacts and how they are affecting the projects that are currently in place and how they'll affect the projects moving forward. And we'll have an opportunity to have a discussion with the board to come up with some comprehensive solutions that will get us to the finish line on our projects based on the scope of work and the budgets that we currently have in place. So that report is being prepared and will be reviewed and presented for public consumption after I've had an opportunity to talk to the superintendent in depth. let's see, we've had a great safety record for the last 60 days. We've had no injuries and we've had no COVID outbreaks on sites. Yay, which means work is moving forward. And if you guys have an opportunity, feel free to stop by the job sites. As you can see, you can actually see buildings now, and they're taking shape and they're looking beautiful. So pat yourselves on the back for this wonderful bond that you all passed that's now coming to life and bearing fruit for you all. So we are planning moves for all of the middle schools to transition from their non-modernized spaces to modernized spaces over the summer so that they can continue the work at the various sites through the fall and into the next year. And so transitional housing is being brought in. As I said, they're moving from the unmodernized spaces to the new modernized spaces at all 3 sites. So come fall, students will be in the new facilities while the older facilities are still under construction and being modernized. And so that transition will occur, and that's going to be a huge effort that will occur over a period of 3 weeks at all sites going at the same time. So needless to say, our teams will be quite hectic for the month of June, making sure that that transition occurs and that everything gets moved where it's appropriately supposed to go. Hopkins will be leaving Lila Bringhurst and moving back to the Hopkins site. They will be in their fully modernized space in their existing buildings, and their 2 new structures will still be under construction throughout the next school year. The Lila Bringhurst site will open as the new Mandarin immersion program site, and I believe that I guess that's around 700 and some odd students, and I don't know the exact number of the local students, but I know that it is over 100 students that are assigned to that particular site. So that will be occurring this summer as well, and we'll be preparing to welcome them and have the ribbon cutting and all the wonderful celebrations that go along with a new school opening. And then we have our project priority list that we will be presenting to the board for discussion, and they'll be able to ask questions, and we have additional information that they had requested to be able to make a determination of what projects we potentially can get started on for execution within the next school year. But the actual construction, of course, cannot occur this summer because we don't have enough time to actually procure and execute quickly on some of these things. But at least we can start our formalized process of any DSA reviews or documentation or design work that needs to occur, and that project actually get lifted off the ground during the summer for execution during the 22-23 school year. So, and with that, that's my report.
So not much going on at all.
Not a lot. Just a few things.
Jennifer Parker. Yep.
I just had a quick question. In all of that I appreciate you sharing, Kelly. Just quickly, well, are there any modernization projects for Kennedy High School that might be going on during this summer? I know we talked previously, and a lot of the stuff is kind of getting mixed up in my head, based on how it's being paid or where it's at. But just
so Kennedy High School will have transitional housing brought in this summer.
Okay.
We are asking for board approval to go ahead and proceed forward with the scope design that's going to be presented. Once that occurs, interim housing is going to be brought in, and a lot of infrastructure work will be done to support that. And then the actual modernization project will then be what we call moved into construction documentation phase. And then that work will occur, and then we're going to submit to DSA, we'll get approval, and then probably by next spring, we'll be ready to actually have a bid where contractors will bid on the work and potentially start by next summer of the nuts and bolts of the major part of the project.
Cool, thank you.
And is one of the big challenges there, really getting through DSA on that project, Kelly? I think I thought I heard that mentioned in the CBOC
Yes,
meeting.
DSA has not been kind to us on Kennedy, but we have been really working hard to establish a clear path of travel for us not to have any roadblocks for us to do our work. In fact, I went last Friday and met with the regional DSA coordinator for our project. And I've known this person for quite some time, and I said, hey, you've got to, for the sake of our friendship, right, our professional friendship, can you please offer me some latitude in some of these things? And we were able to have some very good discussions on how we can minimize and create opportunities for us not to have red flags on certain things. So those types of conversations are occurring, and I think they will bear fruit for us. And so it's just, once again, everything takes time, and we just have to be mindful that it's an old building, and old buildings have lives of their own. So I know that we are running into a couple situations that we did not expect, that we are assessing and trying to figure out how to address them. And this particular type of work falls completely out of the scope of work, but will be required for us to repair, replace, and recover in order for the school to maintain operation and function. So I'm having one of those kinds of conversations right now. So so we're just trying to figure out how to make it all work. And as I said in CBOC, you know, we're trying to look at how to incorporate a lot of these deferred maintenance items, which don't qualify for, you know, capital projects, but to kind of like slip them in under the scope of work and have them be part of all inclusive of the modernization, so that we can maybe, you know, attempt to, you know, address them in some way without causing flags to, you know, say, hey, you're not supposed to be spending the money on that. That's a, you know, a deferred maintenance project from the state. So we'll see what we come up with, but those are some of the challenges that we're working with, and trying to be as creative as we possibly can to get across the finish line. And with that, I have nothing else to report.
Thank you, Kelly. I think the project priority list going to the board is, well, it may not be the same list. It relates back to the list that we reviewed as FAC. So just wanted to remind everybody of that, right? That is the same.
Yes, and that list, if you
topic.
recall, Brian, the board had asked us to validate the expenditures that were identified, the budgets. So myself and M&O, facilities and M&O have gone out, and we've actually gotten contractors to give us real-time pricing on everything that was on that list. So this report that we're bringing, well, it's not really a report, it's just a, you know, we're going to present back to the board, hey, you know, these are our real-time expenses. We originally were just estimating based on square footage and, you know, historical data, but now we have real data from our vendors to say, this is what the actual expense would be based on, if we were to bid it April 2022, this is what the cost would be. And unfortunately, it's significantly higher, but it's reassuring in the sense that we now know this is what it's actually going to cost if we were to actually bid it. So there's no, the guesswork has been taken out of it. And so now we'll have real information to have, you know, solid conversations with.
And one of the things we asked for was to get the revised roofing estimates on our agenda for FAC. Is that part of this information, the roofing estimates? Yes.
So I will have the formalized report ready for our next meeting. I have to review these estimates with the superintendent between tomorrow and Friday before he presents it to the board. So unfortunately, I feel bad that I can't give it to you, but I do have to follow my process and procedures before I'm able to release that information to you guys.
Understand. And then Trustee Jones, definitely welcome reminding the board if there's anything they want us to advise on, and to be very clear about what our recommendation to the board meant. And it was really not saying whether or not we should do any of this stuff, but if you're going to do it this way. But and we like the board are very interested in looking more holistically at the problem, I think.
Yeah, and it was certainly very helpful to have your recommendations, and having sat in on the meeting where you all considered those options and were so thorough and diligent about how you considered them. That was valuable to me. So I want to thank all of you for the hard work that you do. I mean, this committee is a very hardworking and diligent committee doing really critical work for us. So thank you.
Thank you. We're ready to keep rolling up our sleeves. We'll move to our next agenda item, long-range facilities plan update. I've been keeping this on here as kind of a standing item, just so we have a space to discuss it if there are developments. Kelly, I don't know if there are any developments though this month.
There actually are. This past month, there were virtual sessions held with the school principals, and they were broken up into, I think groups of 10, where the consultants met with them. They reviewed the information that had been submitted, and they have established a list of projects that they're going to be actually doing site visits to beginning in June. The principals had asked for them not to come right now because, with testing and end of school year activities, it's just very hard for them to carve out time to make time to meet with them. So they're going to start their site visits beginning, I believe, the last week of May, like on the 23rd, and they're going to do them all the way through July. And what that will entail is them actually photographing and identifying any key areas that site staff and their committees have identified that they want addressed, and verify the information from 2014 if it's still valid or if it has to be updated. So it's a lot of kind of detail work that will occur, but in the meantime they're also going to be generating real-time costs associated with some of the things that they find and determine. So at the end of the process, they'll have a lot of information for us to then start to review and begin the process of, I hate to say prioritizing, but identifying and critiquing the scope of work that they have created to see the relevance of what it does, if it meets the intent of what we actually wanted them to do. And so that's where I see this body coming involved, as well as other site committees becoming involved in beginning to digest that information. So that's my my update on the long range facilities master plan. I have asked them to make themselves available for the next meeting if you all would like for them to come and have a little bit of a presentation to show kind of what they've accomplished and kind of where they are. They are required to come to the board for a June presentation. And they'll formally present to the board kind of where they are and what their kind of restart process has been, and kind of give us revised timelines, and we can review what the original scope was and how and if it has changed at all at that time.
I actually think that would be excellent to have them at our next meeting. Would it be possible for Yumi and maybe them to have a quick conversation just to kind of quickly scope the content?
Sure.
Because we talked about having a conversation with the consultants to kind of identify how best FAC to plug into the process. And I think
sure.
And then we can take action. We can bring that forward as a recommendation to the FAC next time, and get feedback and kind of decide how best to support this effort. And so, yeah. Question, Henry.
Hi. Yes, I was wondering, are there still school sites that were not able to provide any inputs yet, like so that we can maybe talk to those sites, either the teachers or the principals, um, for a long-range facilities plan? And also another question is, what happens to school sites that are going to have a new principal the following year? How do things get carried over in terms of this plan? Because at least a couple sites are going to have new principals.
That's actually a really good question, Henry, that I hadn't thought about. So I'll have to get back to you on that. But my assumption would be if the new principal is someone from within the district, they probably have already gone through the process from their school site. But if they weren't previously principal, then we definitely want to talk to them and kind of get their feedback and input if it hasn't already been done for that school site, and review that with them if it has.
Okay. Because we know at least Thornton and Irvington will have new principals. So
Right, and I know that we've already met with Thornton's principal, and I believe Irvington's principal has already submitted their information and has, I think, didn't she already form your committee as to who she wanted on the site committee for the review?
Not that I know of it. I mean, most sites, I think they're relying on their site liaison. Oh, site council, I mean.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
At least the
I'll
site
find out.
council. Okay, thank you.
I'll find out, because I know that all of the sites have registered and all of the sites have answered the survey. And I know that they have, I believe there's 11 sites that they're going to focus on this summer in particular. And I can send that list to you guys to know which ones they're going to be working on. But the principal issue, you're absolutely right. We have to identify who those folks are going to be and get them kind of in the process up to speed.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, I'm going to move us along. Item 9, subcommittee reports. We have no subcommittee reports. I keep that there as a standing item. And so that will take us to item 10, thoughts on future meeting topics. I am going to attempt to list the topics I'm aware of that have been suggested and received support in this section. At this time, I'm expecting our next meeting to be the long-range facilities plan update and roofing estimates. That will fill our meeting next meeting. But are there any other topics or any other feedback on what our next meeting should include? Bobby.
I'm not sure exactly how this works, but I'm just wondering, the research that Kelly's going to do on the Prop 51 reimbursement, would that be on a future meeting, or would that be told to us a different way?
A great call out. I'd say if you could get the information to the committee, Kelly, then if somebody on the committee wants it agendized, they can contact me, the chair. Or at our next meeting, you can say, I'd like this agendized for deeper discussion. And so we'll look for the update via email. I'll add it to my list for tracking purposes to make sure we don't miss it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. And of course, if you do want it, if you already know you want it and request it to be agendized, you can do that too.
No. I was curious how we would get the update. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other future meeting topic feedback? All right. Seeing none, that takes us to our next item. Our next meeting date is June 1st at 7:30. I think sometimes we've managed to avoid a conflict with graduation and the board meeting and everything this year. That always tends to be a challenge this time of year. But I think we're clear. And if there are no further comments, then I will move to adjourn the meeting.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great month.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Aye.